Hello friends, I am Manu Malhotra, current student of Business Leadership Program at SOIL, and accompanying me is Mr. Simon Goland from the beautiful city of Vancouver, Canada. He is an avid educator, facilitator, and an executive coach as well. Welcome, sir, and tell us something about yourself.
I can tell a lot, but thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to be at SOIL. It's my first time in India, and it has been a wonderful experience to see the culture, to understand the students, and to be able to share at least some of the things I believe in that are important in everybody who goes and to make any kind of a difference in the organizational business arena. So, delighted to be here.
Oh, thank you. So, you teach whole systems thinking. So, tell us something about this new kind of subject.
You know, it's interesting because in some ways the subject is not actually new. It is maybe a newer framework, and it's been absolutely fascinating to teach it in India, where a lot of your ancient teachings of Buddhism and your history and culture actually talk about this particular way of seeing the world as everything interconnected and interrelated.
Okay.
Whole systems thinking puts a very particular language that helps people understand how everything impacts everything else,
Right.
how everything is interdependent, how people within an organization and those outside are being impacted by the actions, how the information and impacts flow back and forth.
Right.
So it really is an opportunity to step back, using a camera analogy, zooming out and looking what comes into play.
Right.
When a company does some kind of an action or make a business strategic decision, who are the stakeholders? And stakeholders is everybody who is impacted by that decision, regardless of the level of scope. Mm-hmm. And so whole systems thinking, in a way, it's a very, on one hand it's intuitive, but on the other hand it's also a very systematic approach to be able to help people understand all the interdependencies, all the causalities, how time plays out, and eventually make more effective decisions. Both on an individual level, but also on an organizational level, as far as the impacts they are creating. So it's a methodology, it's an approach, and I also see it as a very, very powerful life philosophy around how do we become more effective in our personal and our professional lives.
Okay. So you've been to India for the first time. How did you come to know about SOIL, School of Inspired Leadership?
One of the universities I work with is Bainbridge Graduate Institute, which is a school that teaches an MBA in sustainable business, and they are located just outside of Seattle. Mm-hmm. I travel there monthly, and in the spring of last year, Anil was visiting, and so we ended up having a wonderful conversation where he was asking me about the kinds of the work that I do and my interest in international work, and that's how the conversation started, and that's where the invitation came to connect with SOIL, because there is a lot of alignment in the values, what SOIL stands for, and what we were teaching at Bainbridge Graduate Institute, and for the things that I believe in around, what do we need from our future leaders of the 21st century? How are they going to impact the world and really make it a better place for future generations?
Right.
And so that was my connection with SOIL.
So at SOIL truly believes in building leaders with character, competence, and enthusiasm. So how does this whole systems thinking fit into this, leadership model?
I think it's very fitting, because if you think about a passionate, enthusiastic leader who wants to do things that are meaningful in their organization, in their NGOs, in the companies they start, you need to understand the bigger picture. Right. And it really is about being able to see the interconnection of all things. And it's being able to understand that every decision that leader makes, whether it's strategic, whether it's any other, will have impacts. Right. If you have a beautiful, pristine lake up in the mountains of Himalaya that looks maybe like a mirror, and you throw a pebble in the water, ripple effects will start happening. The most impactful and powerful leaders will not look just at the place where the rock fell. They will look at how far the ripple effects will go. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's the impact. Mm-hmm. And I believe that there is no way to do it without the things that you teach at Soil, you know, ethics. How do we make ethical decisions in business? And we've all seen what happens when you don't make them. I mean, there are stories of Enron and WorldCom and many others where leaders have made decisions that were not ethical, that did not look at diversity, that did not look at sustainability and focused on a very narrow, explicit, who are my shareholders, which means who are the immediate people that benefit from the business.
All stakeholders.
What about stakeholders? What about those who are impacted by the triple effect that goes out into the lake? Are they part of the picture? And I believe that the leaders of the 21st century cannot not have those as part of how they operate. It's foundational.
So you mentioned sustainability. How is whole systems thinking different from what we learn in sustainability? So what is the connection or the difference between the two?
That's a good question. I'd say the main difference is that the spelling is not the same.
Okay.
But the fact is they're hugely related, because ultimately what sustainability means is for a business to address three aspects. Not only the financial that has been the traditional thing, but also look at what is the impact of the business on the environment? What is the impact of the business on the people who live in that environment? In order to understand that, you must have a big picture view. You must see how things are related. You must understand that when you're going through an industrial process and there is waste, what do you do with it? The traditional tendency is to say, well, we'll just throw it away. A systems thinker person will say, where is a way? It's a common misconception. We don't have it. Okay, we'll dump it into the underground river, or we'll send it somewhere else. But it will seep through, and it will impact the people who live there, and it will come back to the business. And so a systems thinker looks at the world as loops, connected loops of cause and effect of everything that impacts everything else.
Right.
In that perspective, there is no such thing as a way. That's systems thinking. And sustainability also means, sometimes I call it resilience. Resilience means how do we create communities, organizations, neighborhoods, cities that are going to last and are going to prosper and are going to remain healthy and vital into the future. I don't know specifically about India. In North America, where we have a lot of indigenous people, in the past, whenever they would make any decision, they would look at the impact of 7 generations into the future. The children's children's children, because they've realized that every action they take has an impact on the children and the children's children. And so that is sustainability to the extreme. That is systems thinking, looking into the future. And what if our businesses made the same decisions? What would it look like then? And what would the people in those businesses need to know in order to understand those impacts? So they are immediate siblings. They cannot coexist without each other. Sustainability and whole systems thinking.
Thank you. So of late we have seen a trend. Sustainability has actually got strategic importance in organizations across the globe. So do you see whole system thinking also gaining that strategic importance in the future, in near future?
Absolutely. There is no other way around it. And you know, it's interesting because there are people who are doing a lot of work in the area of sustainability, and they're not even using the words whole systems thinking. It's just natural for them. When they look at where do I get my materials, they immediately look at who is going to be impacted. I'm using paper. Does it come from renewable, sustainably taken care of forest? So it's innately built into them in how they operate. In many others it's not, and that means that perspective needs to be brought forward. And when it does, people might be using whole systems thinking, not necessarily calling their business, we are doing sustainable things. But they will still be doing it without necessarily using the language. So it's a little bit like step-by-step approach, you know, and it doesn't matter which one of the two you focus, as long as you're doing at least one, because one would lead to the other. Right? They're very tightly interdependent and interconnected in how they are operationalized.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure having you here. And I wish that your message of whole system thinking actually spreads across the globe and we become more mindful of this fact. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It's been a delight. I certainly wish that that message spreads, and I'm doing the best effort I can, and I'm certainly hoping that looking at systems thinking perspectives and the things I've shared with Soil, that you're going to become those who continue spreading that message. So if I am a pebble that was thrown into the lake of Soil, you and the rest of the students are the ripple effect that continue taking that message forward. So thank you for the opportunity to share it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.